Welcome back to the Preferred Walk-Ons, a college football show about college football. I'm Jeremy Taché, joined by Dimitri Zamaris. And if this is your first episode, we previewed the American Athletic Conference last week. Now we are on to the ACC here on this college football show. If you've already watched us, thank you for sitting through an hour and 15 minutes of content last week. We will try to keep these shorter.
Everyone wants to hear 30 combined minutes on East Carolina, Tulane, and SMU, right?
Yeah, that's what we did last week because we have nothing better to do with our lives, I guess, besides sit and talk about those schools.
Psychopaths.
Yeah, we're also just kind of insane people. But this week we will be previewing the ACC. We will keep it a little shorter for you guys. But thank you for watching last week. If you haven't, you can go back on this YouTube page and find that pretty easily. If you have, thank you for your support. Continue to share with your friends, like, subscribe, do all the things that everybody tells you to do on YouTube videos. But as I just mentioned, we are going to start with the ACC this week. And if you are familiar with the pattern in which we're going by during these previews, that means we're going to start with Boston College, as they are the first alphabetically in the ACC. So, Meech, do you want to give us a little preview into what's going on for Boston College this year?
Yeah, man, of course. So, also, we're doing Notre Dame in this preview at the end because they're not technically in the ACC, but they play a pretty heavily ACC schedule. So because of that, we decided to include them here, but not until the end. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, you have to watch the whole video. You can't just skip to the end. That's the rules.
That's how watching YouTube videos works, right? You're not allowed.
Right, you can't skip.
I'm pretty sure you can't skip anywhere in any YouTube video.
There's no fast forward button, Jeremy. It's not there. You can look for it. You won't find it. All right. So let's get serious. Boston College, right? The wheels fell off as a program in 2015. That was the year where they didn't win any conference games in football and in basketball somehow. It was I think it was one of the most incredible, just how did that even happen, trivia facts of all time. But since then, they've been a 7-win team pretty much consistently. Since then, Steve Adazio kind of cobbled everything back together. And, Boston College hasn't won more than, I think, 9 games since the Matt Ryan era, which I think was 2005, 2006.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
And so one thing that I think is interesting, and it's not just Boston College, it's a lot of teams in the ACC and actually in the Power 5 in general, is how comfortable are fans with, perennial 7, 8, 9-win teams, right? Where, you're never really competing for not even your conference championship, which is one thing, but not only that, you're not, realistically, you'll never be competing for a national championship, right? Because, how many programs truthfully are, national championship contenders? 20?
Right.
Because of what, especially nowadays with the resources becoming so different between the haves and have-nots of college football, right? So when that gap exists, where do fans kind of settle in on, a perennial bowl team, right? Because it feels like bowls have somewhat lost their luster, right?
Absolutely.
So, think about it this way, right? Last year, Boston College was pretty perfectly where you would want to be. They're in the sweet spot for Power 5 teams in terms of offensive S&P. Maybe they fell a little bit behind, but they were scoring 32 points a game. They were playing really good defense, really tremendous defense last year. They finished 32nd in defensive S&P plus. So it's if you're going to be one of those teams that's pretty balanced, right? And every other team in the conference has the same resources as you do. You guys are all recruiting from the same pool. And then you have Clemson, right? Yeah, that's kind of the overarching thing with every single team in this conference is, okay, what's our ceiling when we know that Clemson, especially as Boston College, Clemson is in your side of the conference. Right. So, and not only that, Florida State, we just saw had a down year, right? So then you have Florida State there, just looming, what is Florida State going to become? And, on the Coastal, it's a little bit more fun, right? Because Miami has never lived up to in all honesty, when they built the ACC, they built it so Florida State and Miami would be meeting in the conference
Yep.
championship every year.
That's exactly what it was.
Miami hasn't lived up to their side of that bargain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a team in the Coastal, I could see you kind of talking yourself into, hey, you know what? Maybe a couple things break right for us. We have a good quarterback. Our defense comes back, brings back a lot of people. Maybe we could compete for an ACC championship and therefore a berth in like the college football playoff.
Exactly.
But if you're in the Atlantic, I just don't know how you look at yourself in the mirror as a program and say, we can compete at a national level.
So that being said, Boston College is a team, like you just mentioned. They're far better than I think. They played defense far better than I think anybody anticipated last year. The problem is that they're not bringing a ton of that defense back. And so
Almost none of it, especially their high-level players.
Well, right. And so that's the issue is what can Boston College really do? And are you okay? Like you just mentioned, they've basically perennially become this bowl team. So when you're Boston College, and really this applies to a lot of the teams in the ACC, to be honest with you, is what do your goals become? Because when you are on their side of the conference, like you just mentioned, when you are in the Atlantic, how do you set your expectations when you're a team that isn't bringing most of your defense back, when that's something that you really sort of thrived in last season? And you do have Clemson on your side of the conference, and you do have Florida State, who hopefully for their sake will be better. And you do have Syracuse, who was pretty solid last year, and seems to be building a semblance of a program. So what type of expectations should you set? I mean, the obvious floor should be bowl eligibility. But when you're a team like Boston College that doesn't really have all that much going for you, can you really hope for much more than that?
Right, exactly. And, to get more like specific into what they're bringing back, I mean, on offense, I mean, this is going to be the year, aside from what they lost on defense, and the defense kind of, not carried the team, but it was a big instrumental part in why they were where they were at the end of the season.
Right.
But you bring back a junior quarterback in A.J. Dillon. I mean, I'm sorry, Anthony Brown. Your running back is A.J. Dillon, who a lot of people argue is the best running back in the country, right? You're replacing 3 starters up front on the offensive line. Chris Lindstrom went in the first round of the NFL draft, so it's not like it's a small loss. You're losing 3 all-conference offensive linemen and an all-conference first-team all-conference tight end in Tommy Sweeney. So the running game that is basically what this offense is predicated on, how is it going to look? The defense lost all this talent. If you get bowl eligibility again this year, I think that's a tremendous coaching job by Steve Adazio.
At the same time, though, you did just mention you got your quarterback and your running back back. I know, we talked about it in our last preview, sort of why losing your offensive line can really be detrimental to the team, especially offensively. And if you don't have a superstar quarterback, you're going to be in a tough spot. But when you do have a really, really good running back and you're bringing back your quarterback with your same head coach, I mean, in the AAC, we talked about that as a recipe for success. In the ACC, it might be a little bit different, but I don't really think so. Just in terms of, it's really the same type of build of the conference right now, right? You got it's Clemson's at the top, UCF's at the top. After Clemson, there's Miami, there's theoretically a Florida State, there's theoretically Syracuse. There's a few teams after that are that next tier of, there's still the competitive teams that don't really have a chance to win the conference. It's a little different.
And they could make a push.
But they can make a push to, win their side of the conference or maybe pull an upset or whatever it might be. And then there's a whole gap after that, a group of teams that are just somewhere in the middle of the road. When you're Boston College,
I mean, that's the thing, is what's separating a team like Boston College from Virginia Tech, or Wake Forest, or I mean, even NC State at this point. So
right, and that's the whole thing. And so when you do bring back your quarterback and you do bring back your running back and you still have the same head coach in there, I mean, it does feel like the expectation should be slightly higher than bowl eligibility. My concern is just I don't think they have the talent to do much more than a 6 or 7 win season.
Right. And, the biggest thing will be, can A.J. Dillon, he's probably, honestly, probably one of the better running backs in the country. He only averaged 4.9 yards per carry, though, last season.
And they're losing offensive line.
Can he thrive in an offense? Right. Exactly. So how effective can he be behind a brand new offensive line? Can he elevate the play of the offensive line just off sheer willpower alone? And can Anthony Brown develop more as a passer? I mean, he was fine last year, but completing only 55% of your passes isn't going to get the job done in this conference. So, bowl eligibility, like you said, feels like the floor, but what really is the ceiling?
Yeah, I think the ceiling would be 8 wins. So if the floor is 6, the ceiling is 8. You know what you're going to get with Boston College this year, and their schedule's not necessarily a juggernaut. They have a couple of difficult games in there. Obviously, they're playing, at Clemson is a loss, at Syracuse is likely a loss, at Notre Dame is a loss. But other than that, a lot of winnable games.
I would say, yeah, their 4 toughest games.
Mm-hmm.
Their 4 toughest games all come on the road, which is kind of trash for them. But
right.
Other than that, I mean, like I said, it just feels like toss-ups everywhere else.
Right, and so they could easily be a 6-6 team. They could also be 8-4, even 9-3 if they pull an upset. But it doesn't feel like there's 9-3 would sort of feel like a miracle considering what it is that they have really going on. But now we get to this is kind of fun because since we are going alphabetically, we get to just address the best team really in the nation. Definitely in the conference, probably in the nation. Will be the preseason number 1 in Clemson. They're next up on this list. So Meech, what are your thoughts on on just a juggernaut national champion Clemson Tigers?
So last year it was all about, look at everything the defensive line is bringing back, right? Like they had, it ended up being 3 first-round picks on the defensive line, and then Austin Bryant went in the 4th round.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Like just something stupid that you like legitimately might not ever see again in terms of like college football. And then they had Trayvon Mullen went in the 2nd round, and then like 2 other guys from the defense are undrafted free agents. So that's 7, 8 guys that are all on NFL rosters.
Oh gosh.
And you know what? Isaiah Simmons might have been the best player on defense last year.
Right, even with right.
He might be the best defensive player in college football. He's kind of in that new mold of like, kind of hybrid linebacker where he can play coverage. He had 7 pass breakups last year while also tallying 97 tackles.
That's outrageous.
He's a freak. He's all over the field, right? And then, but you kind of spin it where they bring back so much offensive talent, and it starts obviously with Trevor Lawrence,
right?
Who as a true freshman had over 3,000 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions last season. I saw it was a Pro Football Focus stat that he threw he only had 4 turnover-worthy plays last season in all of his ACC play. And that was on top of, I think he had 25 plays of 16 or more yards of throws down the field, of 16 yards or more down the field. So this is a guy that's pushing the ball down the field, right? But isn't jeopardizing turnovers. It's
insanity.
For someone that young, it's incredibly it's stupid. That's the only way to describe it, right?
Right.
And he's got every weapon back, dude. It's outside of Hunter Renfrow, and I'm not going to downplay the importance of Hunter Renfrow in Clemson history and Clemson lore, right?
Coach's son will blow you out the building with his work ethic. Won't blow you away with his athleticism, but he's a crafty route runner. Do you see what I'm getting at with Hunter Renfrow?
I see it. But so think about it. Travis Etienne's back, and he in his own right on any other team would probably be a Heisman contender if he didn't share a backfield with Trevor Lawrence. He averaged almost 9 yards a carry last season.
He's
24 touchdowns. And then you have T. Higgins, who's I didn't want to say it. You said it. We had to get our UCF shout out in somehow. But, this is a team, they were top 5 in offensive and defensive at S&P Plus last year. I think they were the only team to do that. The only other team that was close was Alabama. But they throttled Alabama in the national championship. And I think that when you talk about Clemson, you can't talk about the regular season schedule. Sure, they play Texas A&M, but they get A&M at home. I think they're going to beat A&M, right? Sure, they play Syracuse on the road again, and that was kind of they lost to Syracuse last time they played in the Carrier Dome. But with the weapons that they have, I just don't see them losing in the regular season. So it becomes, we have to frame it in the context of what can we see them doing in the postseason.
Right.
And with they bring back T. Higgins, who's probably a first-round pick at wide receiver. I can't remember the other receiver's name off the top of my head.
It's Justin Ross.
But he's ridiculous. Justin Ross, that's
who might be better. Who might be better.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And Clemson quietly has become wide receiver right? And
it's insane.
So and think about how crazy it is. They went from what a lot of people would consider a once-in-a-generation quarterback in Deshaun Watson, and it seems like they have that again. Just change them out. They're interchangeable with Trevor Lawrence.
I think with this team, this is going to sound like a hot take, I think, but there's a chance that this Clemson team ends up being, and they lost a lot on defense, but there's a chance that this Clemson team ends up being the best team we've ever seen on the offensive side of the football. No, on the offensive side of the football.
Although I will say Alabama's offense is just as stupid coming back this year.
It is, and it's an outrage. Look, we're all.
That's a fun conversation to have. That's a fun conversation,
right?
To have.
But we're all in the same spot again, where we're sitting here going, it's Clemson and Bama, and then it's everybody else for the most part. Obviously,
right.
And when we get to the SEC, we can talk about the other schools that are in that mix, because let's be real, it's pretty much just the SEC. But Clemson and Alabama both have these crazy offenses. But Trevor Lawrence, I've never seen a freshman that looked like Trevor Lawrence. I don't think college football has ever seen a freshman.
A true freshman at that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. A true freshman that just came in from high school and looked like that immediately.
I mean, we've never seen a true freshman win a national championship.
Right. And so you see what he has, although I guess Tua
was but he wasn't a starter.
I'm just saying.
You're right. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
But he wasn't the starter, so he doesn't get the quote unquote win, because college, quarterback wins is the worst stat. Anyway, Trevor Lawrence and what he was able to do as a freshman, what he was able to do in a national championship game against that Alabama defense that was loaded,
picked them apart.
It just destroyed them. And what's crazy is that all of the weapons are back. I mean, Justin Ross in that national championship game, I was like, oh, this kid, he's a senior, right? Like, I didn't know much. I didn't watch a ton of Clemson football, and I knew that Justin Ross was good. I had heard of Justin Ross. I had watched them play enough to know, like, okay, this kid's a stud. But a lot of the time, you're at the bar, you're watching the game, you got volume down, whatever.
When you torch Bama, though, it hits different,
Yeah, but then when you torch Bama and you're like, wait a second, he's a freshman too, and they've got Etienne coming back,
and they have Amari Scott back too, who missed a lot of last season with an injury.
The offense is going to put up such ridiculous numbers, and it might not even be scoring, because they're going to go up so quickly, and their defense is still, even with all of the talent they lost, going to be good enough that they'll hang on. The defense will still be in a space where they'll be crushing people early. This team is going to be so efficient. Like, they may not ultimately put up the most points per game that's ever existed. They're going to be the most efficient offense in the history of college football. Like, I don't see a way that they're not, because if you look at their schedule and you look at the teams that they play, Georgia Tech, Texas A&M, Syracuse, Charlotte, UNC, FSU, Louisville, Boston College, Wofford, NC State, Wake Forest, South Carolina. Like, I could literally see a world where Trevor Lawrence throws like 40 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. Like,
that would be insane.
It would be, but what tells you that with the athletes that they have on that side of the ball, and with how efficient he played last year, and with now a full season as the starter where the whole offense will be programmed around his skills? Because mind you, last year, it's not like he really came in and was like immediately going to be the guy.
Right, he had to earn it.
What makes you? Yeah, what makes you?
Kelly Bryant getting injured, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't even take him earning it. It took Kelly Bryant getting hurt for him to actually get the shot. So he was preparing all that season as a backup, and that's what ultimately ended up happening. Like, I don't see a world in which this offense isn't outrageously efficient. And again, they might not score the most points in college football, because there will be other teams that play in shootouts all the game. It could be Houston, right? It could be Oklahoma, right? Because these teams play in shootouts, they don't have defense. Clemson is going to be.
I'm not worried about Clemson's defense. I know they lost a lot on defense.
I'm not concerned.
I mean, it's every year they lose a lot on defense, and Dabo Swinney just replaces them with 5-star defensive linemen. So
they've had a factory.
It's basically Alabama. They are the Alabama of the ACC.
Well, could we call it's this interesting thing, and I had this discussion. I think it might have even been with you last year, where I made the comparison. Clemson is the last 4 or 5 years of the Golden State Warriors, Alabama is LeBron James, right? So
Okay.
like the consistency of we're just going to keep getting there and getting there and getting there and getting there. What Clemson's built now might actually be even better than what Alabama has going currently. But Alabama is
I'm not going to disagree with you.
right.
I
But
think it's
Alabama's Alabama, right? So it's not like a situation where you're going here and you're going, okay, like there's not much of a drop off. But in that stretch there over 8 years where LeBron was in everything, but then it was the Warriors for 4 straight with him. It's a similar comparison that Clemson
and
has
in a way,
an absolute juggernaut.
And last thought, in a way,
Yeah.
Clemson and Alabama has kind of become like the premier rivalry in the sport, and there's not much historically linking the two teams together, right?
No.
But the fact that they just keep meeting in the college football playoff is what's going to do it.
Well, and the funny part of that, really quick, but just the funny part of that, just really, really quick, the funny part about that being a rivalry and them only meeting in the playoff, it's like I also feel like they respect and like each other. Like it doesn't feel like a hate-filled rivalry. It doesn't. I don't think.
I wonder if like it's like, oh shit, we got to play Clemson again, or
oh man,
like couldn't somebody beat Alabama this year? You know,
right? Couldn't we just get a break?
I'm sick of playing them. Yeah,
right. It's boring. It's almost like it's like they actually get to play with stakes, but it's like Michigan and Florida playing every year, where it's like,
Jesus
man, we
Christ.
keep putting each other against.
Except this matters, yeah.
Except this actually matters to these teams. Anyway, moving on.
All right, we don't have to spend a lot of time. It's Duke, right? So
DOOK. Duke.
Yes. They kind of fit in that Boston College kind of category for me, where it's just like, all right, they won 8 games last year, somehow won 8 games while only winning 3 in the ACC.
Right.
And they open up the year again on a neutral site against Alabama, so they get to start off their year getting absolutely destroyed.
Wouldn't that be the funniest upset ever?
It would be hilarious, especially replacing
Alabama.
Daniel Jones.
Incredible.
So I have it here in notable losses. Despite not being good, Daniel Jones was a top 10 pick.
Yeah, he's just not good.
I don't think you can kind of understate what he did okay for Duke. Like obviously having that kind of veteran leadership at quarterback is important. Mm-hmm. But David Cutcliffe just kind of produces productive quarterbacks. Like I wouldn't be surprised if whoever comes in is, 2,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, and like 11 interceptions. Would you?
Yep. No, that sounds right up the alley.
Out of conference
quarterback.
Outside of Alabama and Notre Dame, like their out of conference schedule is not tough with North Carolina, A&T, and Middle Tennessee. Like Middle Tennessee, don't sleep on them, but Duke should beat them. Getting Virginia Tech early might help because who knows? Because Justin Fuente's got a lot going on at Virginia Tech, which we'll talk about when we get to them.
Right.
But I just the defense looks kind of interesting, which might help, but they don't have much coming back on offense at all. So. 7 wins feels right, but I could see them winning 4. Like some in the ballpark between 4 and 7 feels realistic to me. I don't see any more or any less than that, though.
Right. I think their thing needs to be if they don't start hot. Like if they don't, I mean, obviously they're not going to start hot when they play Alabama.
Their defense was quietly really good last year,
right?
Considering all things considered. So.
Exactly, and so you can
not really good, but it was sneaky, kind of just like, oh, that's a pretty stout defense,
Right. Well, and that's the thing. And they bring so much of it back this year, but
they had a lot of young guys too, which is surprising.
Yeah, no. And so they bring back guys that are going to be in this system that are going to feel like, okay, we can take that next step. Like you mentioned, without Daniel Jones, they're probably going to struggle a little bit early offensively. On the other hand, you could also maybe make the argument that without film on whoever that quarterback is, that they could catch some people off guard. They're not going to catch Alabama off guard, but if you can start hot, if you go into Virginia Tech and win week 4, because if you look at their schedule, it's Bama, they'll lose. Then North Carolina, A&T, and Middle Tennessee, you need to get 2 wins. If they can beat Virginia Tech and then rattle off a couple of wins there against Pitt and Georgia Tech, now you're sitting pretty. And even if you struggle the rest of the season, where you probably will, having to travel to Virginia, having to play Notre Dame and Syracuse, Miami could be in
a road, rivalry game against UNC. Like, who knows what UNC
exactly. And UNC, even though they're not theoretically going to be very good, that's a rivalry game. And playing there is not going to be an easy win. So you might struggle the rest of the year, but if you can get off to a hot start and beat Virginia Tech on the road, maybe you can live up to, whatever expectations you set for yourself. Maybe get back to 8 wins. Maybe, who knows, even get to 9 wins. Because the ACC, like we talked about, is very much a toss-up in a lot of these games after, a couple of teams at the top. But I will say I don't expect a lot from Duke this year. Not, again, like you mentioned, not that Daniel Jones was great, but that veteran leadership at the quarterback position in a conference like the ACC is key.
Daniel Jones, by all accounts, like his teammates really respected him. So, I mean, that's got to count for something, right?
Oh, yeah. No, it's not like I'm not downplaying Daniel Jones. We like to poke fun at Daniel Jones because, well, his stats weren't great.
I mean, it's not like Wyoming losing Josh Allen, but you know.
Here, Josh Allen.
But I do just quickly want to say Victor Dimukeji, the defensive end, he was an animal last year as a true freshman, and same thing with Marquise Waters playing safety. So I mean, those are two young players to build around on defense, and I think it's David Cutcliffe. They'll win 5 to 7 games.
Exactly.
Let's move on. This is a much more interesting team to me in Florida State, and not just because I'm sure we both have mutual friends and people like that in our lives who are Florida State fans. But opening up the season against Boise State is going to be an interesting chance for them to say, you know what, we're not the same Florida State team we were last year. And because last year could not have gone worse in many respects for Willie Taggart in his first season. By default, James Blackman is now the quarterback with DeAndre Francois's weird off-season situation kind of unfolding. They have Alex Hornibrook as a backup now, but if he plays at all, it'll probably be a bad sign, right? Cam Akers, one of the more exciting running backs in the country when he actually has space to run, but that kind of gets to what I want to talk about with Florida State, which is the offensive line. Because, I mean, last year it was glaring.
One of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen in Power 5 football.
So
it was supposed to be good. Sorry.
It was very obviously it was very obviously the weakest point of the team, right? Their defense was still, they gave up a lot of points, but if you look at their efficiency numbers, they were 33rd in the country in defensive efficiency, and S&P Plus they were 37th. So, with the talent that they have there, especially their secondary is kind of nice. They got Stanley Samuels, they have Asante Samuel Jr. They got Marvin Wilson. He's like a sack of potatoes pushing up the middle. Really, all they lose is DeMarcus Christmas and Brian Burns, who is a first-round pick on the defensive line. But it's Florida State. They recruit very well on the defensive front. So replacing those two guys might be difficult, but it's not going to be end of the world type stuff. And on offense, I would say they have their outside, Naquan Murray's gone, right? And he was their most explosive playmaker last year. But Tamarion Terry, he made a lot of plays as a true freshman last year. And, all conference honorable mention as a freshman in the ACC, where he almost had 800 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns. I like him a lot. So it's how quickly can the offense get back up to speed? How much different does the offensive line look? But the talent is there at Florida State. I don't think that's the question. It's just how much more efficient can the offense get, because that'll be what makes or breaks them.
Right. Well, and I'm not a huge Willie Taggart guy. I think he's a fine coach, but I will say he does have a ton of talent to work with, and bringing back Cam Akers, obviously, Cam's a stud. And having that kind of workhorse stud running back can always help your offense out, and you can sort of work things out from there, especially in college football. The issue that I have is the consistency of Blackman. Blackman obviously is the guy at Florida State that you're hoping is the starter, right? Because Alex Hornibrook, you know what he is. He is, if anything, a glorified game manager.
Yeah, if you have to see Alex Hornibrook at all, like I said,
that's not a good thing. So James Blackman is, hopefully your guy. I didn't see the things that I wanted to see out of James Blackman in what we saw last year, obviously. Now, the offensive line was so horrific that crushes a young quarterback. I mean, that doesn't really give any DeAndre Francois is someone that I thought was going to be an NFL quarterback. 100%.
Right, I agree.
I thought when I watched him as a young kid at Florida State, I went, okay, yeah, that's a star. And their offensive line play combined with obviously, some of the other stuff he had going on as a quarterback on and off the field, sort of led his demise at Florida State, because really he wasn't any good. And it was a lot to do with the offensive line. I mean, really sort of the end of his career was when he got hurt because of the offensive line against Alabama. And so now you have Blackman, and I'm just not sure what to expect from Florida State, to be quite honest with you. They're bringing back so much defensively, and they have so many athletes on both sides of the ball that they're definitely going to be better than their 5-7 season last year. Like, bowl eligibility is not.
But that's so. Like, think about that. That's what's crazy, right? Is that last year was so abysmal, and they still won 5 games. Like, I mean, it doesn't feel good as Florida State saying, like, hey, guys, we won 5 games.
Right, you're Florida State. You need to do better than that. Like, I know what you're saying, that if you put them in the same tier as all these other ACC schools, then this would be a different type of conversation. If we were putting them in the tiers with the Dukes and the Boston Colleges, then yeah, an abysmal season and still winning 5 games would be great. But you're Florida State. You have to do better than that. And I think they will this year. I just don't know how much. What are your expectations?
It really just depends on that offensive line, right? Mm-hmm. So without really knowing how much better or how much improved they're going to be on that side of the ball, it makes it difficult for me to kind of make a prediction either way. But, would I be surprised if they came back and won 9 games this season? I don't think I would be. Would I be surprised? But I would be surprised if they found themselves in the toilet again, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, last year was just so bad, and I 100% believe in the talent that's there at Florida State.
Right.
And I do kind of like Willie Taggart as a coach, so I think he could figure it out. The problem is just, like, how much better are they going to be up front, and how much of a difference does that truly make with James Blackman, playing quarterback.
Justin Blackman playing
I think
quarterback would be funny.
Yeah, especially at what was he, like, 30 now?
Yeah.
Sauced out of his mind.
Man, Justin Blackman.
I don't want to talk about him. Let's move on. This is an interesting case to me. Georgia Tech, right? So Paul Johnson, triple option, it's out, right?
Right.
They've completely moved on. Jeff Collins is one of my favorite coaches in the country. I don't know how you feel about him.
No, that's a good coach. That's a really good coach.
And so this is my thing. Georgia Tech has, to me, felt like they've been underutilizing kind of the resources that they have, right? They're near Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
They're in Georgia, which is honestly probably the state to be in terms of recruiting right now, outside of obviously like Florida, Texas, Cal. There's a lot of talent in state, and you can start telling these guys, hey, come to Georgia Tech, come play in Atlanta, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know how it's going to look year one, completely moving away from the triple option, right? Because that's a whole undertaking. So they might not win a lot of games this year, but considering what they can build towards in the future and just kind of the swag that Jeff Collins brings to coaching, I mean, even with the transition, I mean, it's Georgia Tech, right? Like, the guys that are there it's not like they're chumps. This is a program that has won a lot of games recently. Right. So the players have a lot of pride, right? How they transition from the triple option will be extremely interesting to see on both sides of the ball, because that changes how you play offense and defense. It's not just like, oh, this is a one side of the ball, we're just changing the offense, right? Mm-hmm. Changing to a triple option changes how you have to play defense. You can be a little bit more aggressive because you don't have to, you can give up some big plays because we don't have to run the ball for 13 minutes to get points. They have some intriguing players coming back. They lost Taquan Marshall, who was excellent as a triple option quarterback, but Tobias Oliver, who played quarterback last season, is probably going to move to a skill position, and he's a freak athlete. I really am interested to see how he's going to play. Lucas Johnson seems like he'll end up being the starting quarterback there. So just the transition to me, I mean, it's just an interesting team, and it's not like, I mean, they opened the season at Clemson, which is not ideal, but then they have US Citadel and Temple, like those are all winnable. Like considering those are all winnable games, I'm really interested in the Temple game though, just for kind of like revenge.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating with Georgia Tech. I will let you know that I'm going to put up a picture of Jeff Collins, and just put swag over it because that's what you just said.
Well, didn't he hire a swag coordinator?
You incorporated Jeff Collins in the word swag, and I'm just going to put up his general picture with Georgia Tech. But nonetheless, with Jeff Collins, I do agree. I think Jeff Collins is a really good coach. I just think it's going to be really, really tough to transition away from the triple option this year.
Right.
There's a ton of athletes. Like, it's not like Georgia Tech is recruited poorly, but
they've recruited for their system.
Exactly. And so they've recruited very specific types of athletes that are now all going to be doing something different than what they were used to doing last year. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. They've had the full off season to make it happen. I think that this program will ultimately be successful for all of the reasons that you mentioned in terms of recruiting and getting everything going. I think if they get to bowl eligibility this year, it'll be a success. I know that ordinarily they are a bowl eligible team.
I agree 100%, especially in year one.
Yeah, I think that Georgia Tech is a respected program. They should be a respected program. They should have a lot of success. This year is going to be tough because, like you mentioned, they're starting off 0-1, so you're already behind the 8-ball. And USF is not a bad football team, and then all of a sudden you're 0-2. And you got to come back from there to try to kind of claw your way back to bowl eligibility. That said, I believe in Jeff Collins as a coach. I believe that Georgia Tech. I will say the one other side of this that is kind of fun is, like, everybody used to be able in this conference to pencil in Georgia Tech as the triple option game where you weren't taking a break because it's not a break by any means to play the triple option. But it was like,
I would say it's the opposite of a break.
Right. Now it's this weird thing where, because you were so used to having to prepare on this ultimate particular level for Georgia Tech, that now what if there's this weird reverse where they massively under-prepare for Georgia Tech,
right,
and all of a sudden Georgia Tech catches a couple of people sleeping that they shouldn't beat because they look at Georgia Tech and go, they're just adjusting this year.
They're just the middle of the road ACC team.
Yeah, they're just some ACC team. Yeah. We play those teams every week. We'll be fine. Let's focus on, Clemson next week, or let's focus on Miami next week, or let's focus, do they catch a couple of people sleeping as a result? That's the one spot where I could see them having a decent year. But I think if they get to 6 wins this year, it'd be a serious success.
Okay, hold on. You want to hear my hot take?
Let's hear it.
In their 6 games, I could see 5-1. Best case scenario.
6 games?
Yeah.
Oh, you're not wrong.
Like if they lose to Clemson, right? And then they beat USF, they could beat the Citadel. Like, these are not teams that I would 100% say they can lose to, right? Like, the only thing is just how quickly can they turn around from this triple option thing, right? I mean,
right. It's a winnable schedule.
I don't know,
it's
man.
Funny.
Very favorable schedule to hit the ground running here.
Yeah, that's true.
And Collins might opt to play some young guys, kind of go with the youth movement, get the guys that he's started to recruit in on the field early so he could see them pay dividends maybe next year, make this like a year 0 type situation. Right. But I mean, it could go either way. I wouldn't be shocked though. I mean, that's a program with a lot of recent success, so it wouldn't blow me out of the water. Let's move now to another team that's replacing a head coach, right? First-year head coach Scott Satterfield at Louisville. Not their first choice, obviously. Right. They tried to go for Jeff Brom, who was a Louisville alum, from what it sounds like. But he spurned them, said, I'm going to stay another year at Purdue at least. I think he's probably waiting out the Auburn job.
Right.
Kind of a little wink-wink situation. But Scott Satterfield's not a bad rebound, Appalachian State has been a tremendously good group of 5 program over the last couple of years. And he's not Bobby Petrino, who I feel like gave up after the first Lamar Jackson Heisman Trophy year. It just kind of seemed like he mailed it in, which, considering his character, wouldn't be surprising, right?
Not at all.
And so this is the thing: they only won 2 games last year. They didn't win a game in conference at all. Mm-hmm. It'd be hard to be worse than that, right? What kind of expectations do you have for Louisville?
I don't think they're going to be worse, but I don't think they're going to be much better. I know they bring a lot back. I know
That's fair.
Scott Satterfield's a good coach, but as we're going through these middle tier programs, I'm not like blown away by what Louisville has. To be honest with you, they'll probably be at the bottom of this conference once again.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, could they turn the program around? Absolutely. I mean, we've seen Louisville compete on a high level just in the last few years. I mean, we saw Lamar Jackson, a Heisman Trophy winner, but even then, they weren't really competing for much.
Right.
Could they?
That kind of peaked with the excuse my language here, but with the ass beating that they gave Florida State, right? Like that was the pinnacle.
That was the pinnacle,
and it was never really any more than that.
Right, and I mean, we've seen them have a good program. We saw them have a good program with Teddy Bridgewater. We saw Teddy Bridgewater kind of lead that program to a lot of success, but I don't know. I don't see much from Louisville, to be quite honest with you. I just think that this year they're kind of in a space where the expectation shouldn't be much more than 5, 6, 7 wins at the most. At the most, if they get to bowl eligibility, that's a big win. What?
No, for me, I would say 4 to 5 wins probably feels like the ceiling, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The schedule's not easy either. Like they get some of the tougher teams. They get the directional Kentuckys. They play Eastern and Western Kentucky, which
right
might be good. But I don't know. Like, could they get bowl eligible if everything broke right? If the quarterback situation works itself out, like who knows? Like Malik Cunningham, I'm not really sure if I believe in him. But Des Fitzpatrick is a pretty solid weapon out at receiver. They're bringing back 3 running backs. Really, they're bringing back a lot on both sides of the ball. It's just they were so putrid on both sides of the ball. Like, how much does that really matter?
Right.
But, like I said, it felt like Bobby Petrino kind of mailed it in. So maybe just a little bit of coaching is all they need to, ascend to that next level and get back to bowl eligibility. But I would say 4 to 6 wins probably feels about right for them.
I agree.
All right, so let's continue on then with a team kind of close in your backyard, really. That's the Miami Hurricanes, who I'm sure you hear a lot about. We have the Hype Bowl to start the season against Florida.
Oh my God!
Where's that game? Where in Florida is that game being played? Is that here in Orlando?
Yeah, it's in Orlando, man. Your backyard.
Yeah. So Manny Diaz, promising head coach hire. You don't have Mark Richt garbage play calling anymore. You have a quarterback in theory now with Tate Martell. Jeff Thomas decided to transfer, and now he's back. So
yeah, it's the weirdest thing ever.
Jack Quarterman is a legitimate beast on defense. There's a lot to like here, in my opinion.
Miami, it's all going to come down to quarterback play. And for what it's worth, Tate Martell has not been good in practice thus far. Tate Martell has. This is just based off of like being down here and being in this scene of reporting. Tate Martell has underwhelmed thus far. He underwhelmed in spring practices. He sort of underwhelmed in the spring game. But at the same time, I think everybody's sort of hoping that guy becomes the starter. Talk about, swag and what he brings to a team. As they're talking about, as Manny Diaz's whole thing here is, quote unquote, the new Miami, which is ironic because the whole premise of the new Miami is that they're bringing back the old Miami. But Tate Martell represents all of those things really, really, really well. And I think if he's a competent quarterback and they can get some competent quarterback play, whether that be from him or Nkosi Perry or Jaron Williams, they just need someone that can go out there and like go win 1 or 2 games, but really the rest of the way, they have so many playmakers. Like Brevin Jordan at tight end. That guy's a freaking beast.
Absolutely.
Jeff Thomas is an absolute stud as a wide receiver, like first-round talent for sure.
Right.
And the defensive side of the ball, while they lost a lot, I mean, they lost a lot. They still bring back that entire linebacking core between Michael Pinckney and obviously Shaq Quarterman, who is just a stud. Like, they're going to have enough to be much better than they were last season. The only problem is, they start the year with Florida, and I think Florida's better.
I agree.
And even though look, there's no reason Miami can't win that game. Like there's no reason that we won't be sitting here in a little over a month talking about how Miami upset Florida and what type of season is Miami about to have. That said, the last few years when they've been supposed to be really, really good, they've sort of underwhelmed. And I mean that last few years, I mean last 15 years. They haven't done anything. And so I really have a hard time with the whole the U is back thing just because you recruited a few players off of the transfer portal. Right. You know, everybody got all excited every time Manny Diaz tweeted a GIF, and he's saying all the right things. And I believe that Manny Diaz is a great coach. Like, there's no reason we won't or can't be talking about Manny Diaz as what we talk about Dabo Swinney right now. Like he's that good, especially as a defensive mind.
Wow.
I really believe that. And the way that he's going to recruit, the way he's going to recruit is going to be absolutely outrageous because he's bringing everything that's fun about Miami back. Like
exactly. And that's the thing.
Right. Mark Richt did a really good job of recruiting at Miami because of the tradition and because of everything. But Manny Diaz wants everyone to act like they did back when the U was the U. Like, that's his whole thing. And that's fun, man. Like, in the social media age where
look at what the turnover chain just by itself.
It was a cultural phenomenon. I mean, literally,
every
I work
team
at
has a turnover thing.
Dude, I work at a news station down here, and every day they had us doing packages on that freaking turnover chain. It's like it matters, and so that type of identity is going to mean a lot to this team. When I look at the schedule, if they can beat Florida, the ceiling is the roof, as the great Michael Jordan would say. Because really, when you look at their schedule and you go Florida, UNC. And then look at this stretch: Bethune, Central Michigan, Virginia Tech at home, Virginia at home, Georgia Tech at home.
Those are all home games. They play 5 straight home games.
5 straight home games. And look, if they've won a bunch of games in a row, people are going to show up. Miami doesn't exactly have, not for, I don't want to offend the Miami fans, but Miami doesn't have this like insane home field advantage because they're a front-running fan base. And so they only in everything down here, really, in the city of Miami, it's kind of a front running fan base. And so if the team just looks okay, or if they get their butts beat by Florida, it's not like those 5 straight home games are really going to mean that much in terms of a home field advantage, but at least you're not going on the road. And you can prepare. So even if they lose to Florida, I would still fully expect them to then be 6-1. And it's what do you do from there? Because after that, at Pitt,
and a loss to Florida, that's not a conference loss.
It means nothing. Yeah, you could still absolutely end up in a conference championship, even if you get your butts beat by Florida. And if Florida has a really good year, and that's your one loss, that might not really mean anything. And so it's the start of the year, everything evolves, different quarterback, blah blah blah. It might not mean anything. And it's the irony of last year, where Miami went into one of these games to start the year where they were playing LSU. And LSU was more in the position that Miami's in, where it was, we're not totally sure. We think they could have a good year, but, it's at Orgeron. It's not the first year, but it's like, we're sitting in a situation where they didn't really know what to expect from LSU. And then LSU beat the brakes off of Miami, which was a huge upset. Would I be totally shocked?
With an Ohio State transfer quarterback.
Exactly. And so would I be totally shocked if this Ohio State transfer quarterback went in and beat the brakes off of Florida? I kind of wouldn't, to be honest with you. Like, it could happen. Do I expect it? No. But I do think that it could happen. Yeah.
I feel like that's the way. Right. All right. Let's move on to another team. It feels like a lot of teams flipped coaches here in the ACC this year. Mm-hmm. Mac Brown, unretiring from ESPN, trading in his golf clubs for a clipboard, right?
Go Eels.
They only won 2 games last year, 1 game in conference. They were 1-7 in the ACC. They have a legit, Sam Howell's a legit blue chip quarterback prospect. He's really, really good. I think he should be the starting quarterback, but who knows? Maybe Mac Brown wants to go with a more experienced guy. And
I'd be shocked if he wasn't the starter.
I would too, right?
Yeah.
Just in terms of upside, and that was the first recruit that Mac Brown contacted when he got the job, right?
Yeah.
So he feels like he should be the starter. Daz Newsome is a really fun wide receiver. So whoever ends up playing quarterback, you have a weapon there. You got all 3 leading rushers from last season back. On defense, their defense wasn't great last year, but Miles Dorn's back. He's holding down the back end. Jason Strobridge, strong up front.
Right.
I'm going to clown it because Mac Brown hired a bunch of old coaches to coach, young men in 2019. And I think it's kind of the opposite of what we've seen from other schools in the conference. Like we just talked about Jeff Collins and Manny Diaz, right?
Right.
Even Scott Satterfield to a lesser degree. But that being said, like, they could very well start off 0-3. South Carolina on the road in a neutral site game, who, South Carolina is the epitome of slightly above average, and I'm not sure you can say that about North Carolina.
Right.
Miami, we just talked about them. We really like where they could be, even if they lose to Florida in that week one. And
then they'll
Wake Forest,
North
that's
Carolina.
a good up-and-coming team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, who knows? I clowned Herm Edwards a lot last year when he got hired by Arizona State, and it kind of burned me when they won 7 games. But I really just did not like the Mac Brown hire, and I don't think they can get more than 4 wins.
Yeah, I don't think they're getting a bowl eligibility. They're a bottom dweller with Louisville in this conference, to be honest. I don't think there's much more that needs to be said. But go Heels. Hey, love the baby blue.
I'm excited to see Sam Howell, I guess.
Exactly. That's the part that's exciting. If they do start the true freshmen, at least they'll have something to look forward to going forward. So, like, they'll have the opportunity to watch their guy that is the quarterback of the future and see if they can find themselves, hey, another Mitch Trubisky, right?
And why do ACC teams keep scheduling Appalachian State? Stop doing that.
Well, North Carolina and Appalachian State, it's only a couple hours. I love Appalachian State. I went to a football game one time at Appalachian State. It was a blast.
Stop paying teams to come to your house and beat you. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I agree there. But, I mean, we also – yeah.
So one team going through, like, a complete, like, just undertaking. NC State lost legitimately every good player off their offense from last season, right?
Yep.
Ryan Finley's gone. Kelvin Harmon and Jacoby Myers both gone. They lost 2 NFL offensive linemen, right? They're replacing – the most offensive talent in the country, right? Even more than West Virginia, who I think lost like a very good amount of talent.
Yeah.
So Matt McKay played in a couple of games last year, not enough to lose his red shirt. So he's a redshirt freshman. I thought he was pretty promising. Dave Doran's a really good coach coming from that Boise kind of coaching tree. The schedule's not really that tough. They could win 7 and 10 games again, to me, especially the defense is going to be probably pretty improved with all that they're bringing back. And they're going to have to rely on the defense early on, no doubt, to carry an offense that's going to be kind of getting to know each other on the fly. But given the schedule, the way that – I mean, it's just – NC State's one of those sleeper programs to me where it just feels like there's a next level for them to reach, but it's the question of when and if they can ever reach it.
The problem is that they never get there.
Right.
So the problem
last year was their best chance, right? And they didn't even do it.
Right. And that's my concern is like they had so much last year and they didn't do it. I kind of think I understand some of the positivity that you could feel and the defense could be really solid and all that. I kind of think NC State takes a giant step backwards this year. And I know the schedule isn't necessarily a juggernaut, but it's like it's almost a hangover from the fact that they didn't reach the expectations last year, and now they're losing so many of those guys that would have been the ones to go, all right, but let's come back and let's fight and let's do that. Yeah,
like you missed that one shining moment, right?
Yeah, and now that you missed it, can you ever really get to it with this version of yourself? I'm not so sure, and so I'm not super high on NC State this year. Like, do I think they'll be bowl eligible? Yeah, I think so. But do I also think that there's a chance that they could have one of those wheels fall off seasons that Florida State had
and have to come back and rebuild? Yeah,
and have to rebuild it. Absolutely, I could totally see that happening. And I know that that's kind of a shock, but at the same time, when you look at the back end of their schedule, like if you look at what that really looks like, when you go Clemson, now they're home against Louisville, who they should beat, but you never know, and then at Georgia Tech and against UNC. Georgia Tech might finally know who they are by that point. UNC is a rivalry game. If the wheels sort of are falling off, and before that, it's at Boston College and at Wake Forest.
That stretch starting with at FSU down through versus Clemson, like at home, that's a tough stretch for anybody.
That's a really tough stretch, and so that could be where things sort of fall apart. And I don't know. I don't see much for NC State this year, to be honest with you.
And that West Virginia game on the road is very losable to start the year too.
Right.
All right, let's move on. Pitt.
Yeesh.
The only team to they not the only team, but they've beaten Clemson in recent years, right?
Yeah.
They
It's
keep
so
winning.
weird.
They've won the ACC Coastal more times than Miami has.
Right.
They
It's
won
so
the
weird.
Coastal last year with 7 wins, and Miami came in second with 9. So
Pitt is an anomaly
or
this
7. I'm
season.
sorry.
No, I know what you mean, but Pitt is a team this year. Like, I just want to get right into that schedule. Virginia, Ohio, not Ohio State, at Penn State, UCF. Like, that's a tough stretch to start
That
the
could be
year.
0-4. Ohio
Ohio's
for a
not that
MAC team is
bad.
really good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They could be 0-4 to start the year. They just won the ACC Coastal last year. And it's not like it gets that much easier from there because they got to go to Duke. They got to go to Syracuse. Then they get Miami, at Georgia Tech, UNC, at Virginia Tech, and Boston College. At least they don't play Clemson this year. But goodness gracious, I mean, could Pitt miss a bowl game this year after winning their side of the conference last year and not being that much of a different team?
Well, I'll tell you what really doesn't help them is the fact that Pat Narduzzi loves running the football, and they lost their 2 best running backs who both were all conference guys in Quadri Allison and Darren Hill.
Right.
And then they lost 4 starters who had been who had all played for 5 years in the program.
Right. My concern, and this is totally selfish, why does Pitt have to have their down year when they play UCF? Like, why does this year have to be the year that you're probably not going to be any good? And when UCF beats you, it's just to get you to 0-4, not,
Well,
your first
UCF
loss
crushed
of the
them
year.
last year too, right?
Yeah, of course they did. But it's just, I'm just going from the purely selfish angle. I told you there would be a UCF reference in every single one of these episodes. And from the purely
We made like
selfish
5
angle,
though.
yeah, shut up. From the purely selfish angle, I am in a state of disarray thinking about the fact that Pitt is going to be garbage this year. Like, I don't think they're making a bowl game. I really don't.
Wow. Okay. I won't go that far. I think they could still squeeze 6 wins somewhere, but
Maybe,
it's
but
not likely. Not
that
likely.
schedule's tough, man. They play some tough road games, and that if they don't beat Ohio, like Ohio is one of the games that they're going to need. And if they lose to Ohio week 2, like they're starting 0-4.
Kudos to them though for scheduling tough out of conference games. Like if you're going to schedule a group of 5 teams, schedule good ones, right?
Yes, absolutely. Like to schedule
this coming off of where I just said stop scheduling App State.
No, but do it. No, and like you mentioned, I mean, look, Ohio, like that's a fun team to play because they're a solid team in their conference. You're scheduling UCF. That's obviously a very good group of 5, the best group of 5 team. So to make that type of decision is a good one. But moving from Pitt down on to Syracuse,
much more interesting team.
Probably the most interesting team in the conference, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of just like, what are they gonna be?
Right.
And I think Dino Babbers is an incredible coach.
I love him, dude. I love him. Just the energy that he brings, everything.
The issue though is how do they replace Eric Dungy?
So Eric Dungey missed a lot of games because he's out there running like a madman.
Mm-hmm. But I guess the big question would be what, they were 10-3 last year. They were really, really good. And when you take a look at their schedule, there's kind of no reason they couldn't do that again.
I will say this, Liberty, the team that they open with on the road, Liberty is an interesting team, man. Like Liberty as a university can go to hell. But their football program is kind of interesting, right? Hugh Freeze is there. They got a lot of cast-offs from like Division I schools.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think they'll lose to Liberty by any stretch of the word, but
it could be a tougher game than you would think, I guess.
It's weird. Same with Maryland. Maryland always beats teams that you wouldn't expect out of conference.
All the time they do that. They're one of those teams that just frustrates everybody. Yeah, like Syracuse is going to be sort of an anomaly there, though, right? Because, I mean, they're bringing back some, they're without their quarterback, it's tough to really acknowledge how much they're bringing back on the offensive side of the ball. But at least they're able to return their best wide receiver and their best running back, right? And that's
right. And it's a Dino Babers Baylor offense, right? Like that's they're gonna score points regardless.
Exactly.
And Tommy DeVito didn't look awful when he did play last year at quarterback. Like he wasn't great, but he hadn't had a lot of game reps before then. So with a full offseason as the starter, as the guy, who knows what he could look like, right?
Yeah, I think there's no reason this team couldn't be a 9 or 10 win team once again this season, honestly.
And they got some dudes on defense, bro.
So,
Alton
dude,
Robinson.
yes.
Alton Robinson is a beast. Like,
Right, but the problem is for them, here's the only issue. If they lose to Clemson week 3, the season's basically over. Like, in terms of what your big hope would
right,
be,
then what are you
right?
playing for?
What are you playing
You
for?
got to hope Clemson loses.
And that's the hard part. When you are bringing guys back, it's so hard to motivate. Like, if Clemson's later in your schedule, like my whole thing is like, and this seems ridiculous, but it's like, how do you stay motivated the rest of the year? I know these are college kids. I know that they're supposed to be motivated throughout. It's, Dino Babers is a great coach, blah, 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 blah. It's tough if you lose to Clemson week 3 and you know that your shot at an ACC is done.
Can I say one thing about Clemson versus Syracuse that I think is interesting?
Absolutely.
Syracuse has beaten Clemson recently in the Carrier Dome, right?
Or
came close.
Yeah.
They came close.
It was a 1-point game, right? Wasn't that like the 25-24?
But they play Clemson in week 3. That's Clemson coming off a home game against Texas A&M, and what'll probably be a top 10 matchup, right?
Yeah.
So you catch them and you get them at home in a dome, which is a weird place to play by all accounts. The Carrier Dome is just a weird stadium.
That's fair.
It's not like they're at a huge talent disadvantage, but it's not like that they're at a huge team disadvantage. I think Dino Babers does well enough in scheming and drawing up like crazy plays where, I'm just saying I could see a way where they could maybe upset Clemson. Maybe. I'd put it at like 20%, but not any higher than
20% is higher than most people would say. But if they can do that, then the sky's the limit for Syracuse, and they could they could see themselves in a college football playoff. Like,
if we saw Syracuse in this college football playoff would be fun for just
amazing. It'd be so fun, and all of the sports journalists,
just some random college football team from New York in the college football playoff.
All
the Yankees fans starts claiming Syracuse.
Oh my God, I don't want it. Never mind.
Plus, can we talk about how the Angry Orange is like one of the most awesome mascots in college football?
It's probably the best mascot in college football. All right, but moving from Syracuse, we got a couple of teams left here, and let's try to run through it.
All right,
Virginia. Start off with Virginia.
I love Virginia, man. They're tough, dude. It's just like you look at them. That's just a tough team. Like Bryce Perkins, he's awesome. He's a legitimately awesome quarterback, and he's back. They won 8 games last year. They won, I think, 8 games the year before, and this is a team that was just trash before. Bronco Mendenhall got there, right? And he's done a tremendous job since taking over. You can see his identity and his fingerprints all over this program, right? I would not be surprised if they win the Coastal this year.
I was just about to say that.
I wouldn't be surprised. I like this team a lot.
Virginia's my favorite to win the ACC Coastal because I just don't know what Miami is. 100%. Look, if Miami comes out here and smokes Florida week 1, we'll be having a different conversation. But I don't know enough about.
Then we can revisit this take, right?
Right. We could totally revisit this take. But right now, where I don't know what the quarterback play is going to be for Miami, and I do know what the quarterback play is going to be for Virginia, I trust Virginia more. I see the talent that they're bringing back. I see Bronco Mendenhall as a coach, and I go, yeah, I really like what this program can be this season, and I think that they legitimately have a shot to win the ACC Coastal. Do I think that they'll beat Clemson ultimately? No. But would it feel great to win the ACC Coastal? Heck yeah. Virginia's a really good team. And when you look down their schedule, I mean, yes, they have to go to Miami. They have to go to Notre Dame. But they can lose to Notre Dame, and that's not really an issue. It's not an actual conference game. And when you look at the back end
that's not a conference game, exactly.
Right, exactly. And so when you look at the back end of the schedule, I mean, after they play at Miami, so it's, I think they're going to beat Pitt to start the year. I do. William & Mary, they get FSU at home. Then they get Old Dominion at Notre Dame, at Miami. After Miami, man, Duke, at Louisville, at UNC, Georgia Tech, Liberty, Virginia Tech. I mean, and at home. Now, the rivalry game of Virginia Tech, I don't see a reason why Virginia can't go win 10 games this year and win the Coastal. Like,
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, this feels like a 10-win team to me.
I'm glad we're on the same page. Look at us go.
Hey, I like Virginia a lot. Let's move on to a team I'm not so high on, and that's just due to a lot of the dysfunction it feels like in the program, right?
Yeah.
Virginia Tech has lost a boatload of guys just transferring out of the program over the last year and a half.
Yeah.
including starting quarterback Josh Jackson, who broke his leg last year. That really gross injury. He's at Maryland now, which I actually think is a good fit. We'll get to that when we talk about the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But I just, all the transfers, it just feels like the fan base is ready to turn against Fuente too, which feels strange after 2 years.
Yeah.
I guess this will be his third season, right?
Right.
But
the spot that they're in is complicated.
There's just a lot of bad juju flowing around that program.
It's very weird, and Josh Jackson leaving is obviously a huge deal. He was very good. Really, it's funny. When he got hurt against Miami 2 years ago, when Miami had the really good season,
Right.
When he got hurt against them, that was sort of the end of Fuente's run because Jackson got hurt. They lost a couple games at the end of the year. Last year went horribly. The funny part is if you look at their schedule, I could see them winning every home game and losing every road game.
Yeah.
Like, look at it specifically that way. They could lose at Boston College, at Miami, at Notre Dame, at Georgia Tech, at Virginia, and then win every home game because it's Blacksburg.
I don't want to like poo-poo too hard on Virginia Tech, right? So Ryan Williams comes back. He's a pretty good quarterback. Like he was fine last year when he played. I would say he's actually maybe a little bit above average. Not great, but not awful by any stretch of the word. The defense was really not what you would expect from a Virginia Tech defense, especially with Bud Foster coaching them. But they played so many young guys last year that so many guys are back, right? They have
why I'm saying
most returning. They have the most returning. No, you're good. They have the most returning production of any defense in the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would it be shocking if the defense is back in a top 25 type unit?
Not by any means.
Right.
Not by any means. So that's why I'm saying I fully anticipate
they could go 6-6 and get back to the bowl.
I fully anticipate them being bowl eligible this year. I just don't think they're going to be much better than that because those road games are tough. Here's the last team in the ACC, and then we'll get to Notre Dame. It's Wake Forest, and I know you're pretty high on Wake Forest, although they start the year with your side chick Bay in the AAC with Tulane. But what are your thoughts on Wake Forest to start this season?
The QB competition is going to be huge. I like both of the quarterbacks that they have. Sam Hartman's awesome. Jamie Newman's really good also.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever wins that will be in a good position because they have Greg Dortch coming back, who's just a playmaking phenom, right, at wide receiver. Probably one of the most exciting playmakers in the conference that doesn't play for Clemson or Syracuse.
Right.
Their defense brings back a lot. I really like Wake Forest. The problem is they're in the Atlantic, right?
Yep.
They're with Clemson. They're with Syracuse. They're with whatever Florida State ends up being.
Yeah.
They won 7 games last year and finished 6th on their side of the conference.
Right. Well, that's what I was about to say. It's tough for me to see them finishing any higher than 4th in the conference, even though I think they could have a good season. I just don't see a world where they're finishing higher than, Clemson, Syracuse, NC State again, Florida State. I mean, all these teams that are coming back. Do I think they'll be better than Boston College? I think that's possible. I don't see why not. I don't feel bad about Boston College.
I look at this schedule, and I think this is a 9-win team.
I don't. Again, when you look at it, especially if they start the year beating Tulane, which theoretically they should, you're starting 3-0. You're losing to Notre Dame probably. You're beating Rice. You're losing to Clemson. All right, there you go, 4-2. And from there, it's all those teams that we've talked about as sort of a toss-up. So you're right. I mean, if you're starting the year 4-2, there's no reason you can't get to 9 wins.
You don't want to get stuck in the 2 quarterback trap, though.
Yes.
Whoever wins the starting job just needs to be the starter.
Absolutely.
You can't be juggling quarterbacks. But Dave Clawson's a really good coach. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't let that happen anyway, right?
Yeah, they got to figure out who their guy is. But once they do, I think the floor, again, another one of these teams, floor is bowl eligibility, but the ceiling, I think, is probably
9 to 10 wins, it feels like to me. They have more of a, they have a higher
little high. 10 wins feels a little high for me.
I don't know, man. They have a higher ceiling than a lot of the other middling teams, I feel like. I like what they got. I like what they're building at Wake Forest a lot.
Yeah. All right. And so last team here for us to cover, we're going to go with Notre Dame. What are your thoughts on Notre Dame, Meech?
They're pretentious. No, I'm sorry. We're talking about football, right? Right. No, Ian Book's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. They lose their 3 best offensive playmakers with Dexter Williams gone, Alize Max gone at tight end, Miles Boykin's gone at wide receiver.
Right.
Really, all that's left on that offense in terms of skill position talent is Book, right? Claypool's back at wide receiver, and he was okay last year. Like, he wasn't blowing you away. And how many years is it going to be where we see Notre Dame go a phony 12-0 in the regular season, only for them to? They feel like somehow just like the luckiest team when it comes to just breaks during the regular season.
It's the luck of the Irish, dude. It's literally
which is weird because you think with all the bad karma that Brian Kelly stacks up, it would all disappear at some point.
I will say Notre Dame should be good, right? Notre Dame should be good. It should be another one of those years. At the same time, could I see them losing at Georgia? Could I see them losing to Virginia? Could I see them losing to USC? Yeah. Could I see them losing to Michigan? Could I see them losing at Stanford? Yeah, I could see them losing all of those games. So while they may go that phony 12-0, while they may go that phony 12,
I don't think that's on the table this year.
I don't think it's on the table this year. So I think that this is one of those seasons where Notre Dame is good. They probably get 9 or 10 wins, but we're not talking about them in that same conversation for the college football playoff, and I think that's important to address. They're not going to be the team that is trying to sneak in there and screw everything up for the Power 5 and the theoretical group of 5 team that's trying to get in.
Right, and I'll say this. This feels like a rebuilding year with how much they're replacing on offense and defense. But having that senior quarterback in Ian Book, who was really good last year, like he kind of got the Notre Dame bump where people are like, dude, Ian Book's, he's a legit, like, crazy good quarterback. He's fine. He's fine, right? But, he's back. He's a senior, but they're replacing – I mean, they lost their 2 best defensive players, Drew Tranquill and Jerry Tillery, right?
8, 9, 10
and the defense is what carried their team last year.
Yeah, 8, 9, 10 wins feels like – I mean, I know that that's a very different feeling, 8 to 10 wins, but, like, 10 is the max, 8's probably the worst. This feels like an 8 team to me. Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be phenomenal. I think 8 or 9 wins feels like the spot, and that's okay. That's a really solid Notre Dame team, and they'll continue to rebuild. But yeah, that's where we're at. So
they have their laurels to rest on.
Oh, God. But, all right, so to wrap it up, we both agree Clemson versus Virginia in the ACC championship game?
That's what it feels like to me, yeah.
All right, cool. So, all right, guys. Well, that was the ACC conference preview. We'll be back with the Big Ten next week, where we'll be addressing everything there, and we'll keep leading you up to the regular season. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to this page. Share this with your friends, and thanks for tuning in.
Peace out, everybody.